Italian Wine Podcast. Chin Chin with Italian wine people.
Hello, my name is Monty Waldin. I'm with Pascaline Lepeltier, who is a French sommelier based in New York. Welcome.
Thanks.
Now, reading your biography, you seem to do everything 150%. You're not a person that does things by half. Tell me how you got from rural France to running to being the sommelier for one of the most famous restaurants in New York.
It's a lot of meeting the right person at the right time, you know. So I grew up in Angers, was pretty lucky to be pretty good at school. So parents, academic, so I was thinking, I'm going to, become a teacher. I was getting into philosophy very early on. So
when you say pretty lucky being at school, you got like almost the perfect score on your the key French exam, yeah? 19 out of 20. That's pretty good.
I was lucky to be good for the system. I can adapt that pretty well to systems. So I like studying. I'm a curious person.
So when you got your school results, apparently your teacher opened a bottle of champagne.
And
was that how it started, your journey into wine?
Kind of. I was in love with him. So yeah.
Tell me more. I didn't know about that.
My philosophy teacher, and he opened a vintage bottle of Veuve Clicquot. My parents didn't drink wine, or like they were drinking, very basic Côte de Bourg, Côte de Blaye. There is no wine interest in my family whatsoever. So I was kind of in my relation with my philosophy teacher, and he also liked wine. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I want to be a philosopher, and wine is really great. So, and then I went on to study philosophy, and I was on my way to become a teacher, and I realized that it was stupid to become a teacher at 21. And it was like, as we say in French, an imposture, meaning like, how can I teach at school, high school, for kids about life and death and the meaning of all that, and you can understand the concept but go only that far. So I took a break, and during that break I found a job in catering and restaurant, and I liked it. So I told my parents, listen, what about me taking a further break and try to work in restaurant and catering?
Were they disappointed? Do they think their highly intelligent daughter was going to end up flipping burgers in McDonald's? Or
no, they were relieved. They were seeing me reading Nietzsche and Heidegger and doing my master on the linguistic in Bergson. They were like, my God, what she's getting into, and there is no other way for her. Just philosopher, they were kind of scared. They are scientists. You know what? It's good for you. Down to earth. Go back to work. You're gonna learn something. Restaurant, why not? And they really believed that it was something gonna go away, and it didn't. So
what was it that you liked about it? Was it the camaraderie, the fact that you're part of a team? You've got to get the food out on time. It's got to be good.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and also just the food per se. So my mom doesn't really cook. I grew up in a region where you can have a lot of fresh product, and so we always had very high quality product on the table, but super simply prepared. So no, I didn't really were exposed to restaurant at all. And when I started to realize, wow, the work behind the work of the chef, taste you can provide, and catering, how you can change something, create an experience for people with a lot of logistic constraints, was and just the heat, you need to be ready, and it needs to be great for 2 hours. And so that was quite fascinating. I need something very, very down to earth after studying so much high level conceptualization. And the more I was getting into that, the more I realized that out of catering, out of restaurant, I started to get towards wines a lot. I couldn't get into culinary school because I got too many diplomas, so I got just kind of told by a bunch of people, you know what, it's stupid for you to go to restaurant. You could do so much better. So not my parents, but professionals, they were like, this is stupid. So it took me a long time to find a way, because it's super difficult to work in France without insurance or internship or stuff like that. So I found myself back to university studying for an MBA in hospitality management, and I did that in 2 years. And
were you still living with your parents at this time?
No, I was in the same town, but no, I was not at all living. I left my parents at 16, so I was on my own. And
but you weren't running away though, were you? It wasn't like you didn't get on with them, or maybe the food was a bit boring at home.
A little bit. I was a kind of a hard teenager. I don't wish anybody a daughter like me. I knew what I wanted, and it was
if my little boy falls in love with a philosopher, it'll be okay, buddy. It'll be fine. He's only 8, so we got a bit of.
I think philosophy. We miss philosophy today, but yeah.
So you got into the kitchen. You were getting into that kind of physical, hard, long hours work in kitchens, on your feet. Grumpy customers.
No, I wanted to, and I could not. So
how did you bridge that? What did you do to get in there?
So I passed my MBA in management hospitality, and I worked in a catering company very famous in Paris as kind of a manager Excel sheet and numbers and all that. That was very, very boring at the end. And we were preparing the wedding of Bernard Arnault. It was the very last month of my internship there. I was on my way to get hired over there and everything. And they brought me that 1937 ICAM because the wedding happened to be in Bordeaux and they were going to pour that wine for that wedding, for the dessert. And that changed my life. I was already like attracted to wine, going to classes. At my MBA, I was taking every stuff about wine. But that day I was like, wow, that stop is like the duration of Bergson I was dreaming about, of a certain like Tomatzane from Plateau happening. Like that is a feeling mixed with intuition that I will never live again unless I get into wine. So I went back to my parents. I said, listen, I'm gonna pass my MBA. I'm gonna stop that stuff. I want to be on the floor and I want to sell wine. And
so they must have loved that. So okay, we've got her into the MBA. She's got life back in shape, and now suddenly, okay, folks, I got my MBA. Now I'm going to work in a restaurant.
No,
that's it. In a restaurant.
And I was in a restaurant. So I entered a school to learn about that. I was with 16 years old kids. And it's a kind of the basic level of diploma in France. And you do 1 week in school, 3 weeks in internship.
So internship means working on a vineyard or something?
Working in a restaurant on the floor is what I did. And I was extraordinarily lucky because two things happened. I studied in Angers, so I went back to Angers. I could get into that school. My teacher was already a proponent of organic, natural, and biodynamic wine.
Had you heard about those kind of wines before? Or was it complete news to you that wine actually could be made?
I kind of knew because I was starting to drink a lot of wine, and I was kind of already, and I grew up in Angers, so Angers is a kind of a revolutionary area. My parents are very close from 7 years, so I heard about Nicolas Joly and all that stuff. I was not drinking a lot of that, but I heard a lot of that. Definitely got in that school. It was the only one we were talking about at school. And meanwhile, I was in my internship, I managed to do it in a 2 Michelin star in Brittany with an insane cellar with all the classic wine you could dream to drink back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s with a lot of aging stuff. So it was amazing. The chef was a chef owner. He loved wine. He had allocation directly from all the estate. He knew personally Aubert de Villaine and La Loubise-le-Roi. He was going to ICAM, recorking his old 1920s ICAM. And so I was just in a heaven for a year and a half when I was learning that wine was made in a vineyard at school. We were doing pruning, harvesting, and all that stuff during our school time with the hardcore guy from the natural wine world. And I was learning the great classic. It was clear for me that the way to make wine was happening in a vineyard by knowing the people. And we probably were losing something after the 85, 90s. Something was changing in a way.
So when you say something was changing, what do you mean? Industrial winemaking and
more something that was very positive and very negative at the same time. Is more and more enology entered the cellar and more technical aspect and a vinification based on numbers and less on intuition, less on observation. Whatever the viticulture was or the vinification was, you were like, okay, we need that amount of water, of potassium, of nitrogen on your soil. All this scientific knowledge that started to really grow after the 50s, 60s, 70s became something very positive for understanding, but at the end also led to an industry based on how can we make money out of that, what can we provide to create business to develop the oenological industry we know today, and making something more stable, more easy to sell, more easy to market, and we are where we are today, where at the end, two type of wine, you either start from the vine and the vineyard and the year and the vintage and all that, or you start from the target you want to market. So we are in two different set of wine today.
Anyway, what was the next step?
I wanted to travel, and I got hired by big luck by my company, which is a Belgian-based company called Rouge Tomate. Got hired in 2007 when they were looking for someone with a university background to be able to develop process, but also on the floor background to develop beverage charter based on nutrition and to create a beverage program for a soon-to-be open restaurant in New York. So I got hired really by chance, by just connection, and for a year I studied and worked with a team of nutritionists and scientists to put a new way of thinking about how do you build a beverage program that is healthier in terms of the product you are drinking, but also more sustainable, better for the planet. And how can we put that together? What are the criteria? How do you make that possible in a restaurant for 150 seats? Or how do you pick your water? How do you pick your coffee? Or what do you pick your tea? How do you prepare it? How you keep it? And so I did that for a year. And then we opened New York, and I was not supposed to move there, but the wine team there was not as dedicated as I wanted to be, so they asked me to move for 6 months, and I stayed. So I'm in New York since 2009.
So when you say the wine team there weren't as dedicated, do you mean that they were allowing in wines on the list that were, let's say, a little bit more very much in inverted commas industrial?
There was a lacking of understanding about how far we could go and how we should be. We wanted us to be a benchmark over there.
So how do you change that? If you've got a list of wines and you're going to say, right, we don't want to stock these ones anymore, we want to get some new wines in, what are your sort of criteria for wines that would fit this ethos that the restaurant had in terms of nutrition side, the healthy side, if you like, of the wine aspect?
We do the same thing that for the food. So at the restaurant, we don't have any processed food. Like 99% of everything is done in-house. So for the wine was the same kind of criteria. It's like, first and foremost, it was going towards the organic and biodynamic farming, knowing that certain region is very, very, very complicated. So you need to kind of be a little bit more open-minded about how do you select. And we are a New York restaurant sponsoring local wine. So, okay, I want to have New York wine. So there is no organically certified New York wine today. So how do you think about that? So the type of farming, the no use of herbicide in vineyard. And then in terms of vinification is as little additive as possible. And then it was naturalist fermentation, spontaneous, no acidification, no play on the physical quality of the wine, and good taste, and true to their place. And then it started like that, little by little. We started at like 250 references, and now we closed the restaurant, we reopened because we had to move for rent issues, and now I'm like at around 1,500 references, and I would say 90% of the wine is like that. It's also not just question of pure criteria, it's question of I am a restaurant where I want people to have a good time and really enjoy a good bottle of wine, and the more we taste, the more I taste, the more I say, okay, if you really want to enjoy something from that place or that place, there is no billion of ways to make the wine. You know, if you start to yeast and if you start to do cold ferment and then you start to hardcore filtration at the end, you put a bunch of bentonite, like you do plus and plus and plus, the wine just doesn't represent his whole potential.
It becomes a little bit standardized.
Yeah, and it's too bad because wine is such a unique product in the world of what we can eat and drink that can transmit something that is so much more, and it's possible and it's doable. And it's doable by why? By observing more and farming better and thinking about biodiversity, and that is what I'm thinking into. So
but in the old days, wasn't it a little bit comforting for people that they could go into their supermarket, for example, there'd be 15 Chardonnays on there, all from different places, and they'd all, in inverted commas, all sort of taste the same. That was quite sort of reassuring for customers, that they knew that they weren't going to get a nasty surprise. Do you think we're moving on from that? And if so, what are people's motivations for moving on from that, for being a little bit more adventurous?
Well, we're in a transition world in terms of wine, I think. And I think, yes, we're moving from that, because who drinks wine today and really get into wine just realize the nuances and the potential of diversity you can get. So they're transitioning time. So yes, it's maybe a good thing to get into wine, but soon on, if you really enjoy the wine as a alcoholic beverage, you are going to be entitled. It's the same way as the food. You go up to a limit.
How do you unwind, if you ever do unwind? You've got so much responsibility and your brain sort of works at 150 miles an hour. Do you ever manage to switch off at all?
No. I go surf.
You go surfing?
I'm surfing. I stop thinking when I'm surfing.
Yeah, just go back to your thought about the food. I worked in California for the Fetzer family and was working on a biodynamic project called creating a vine garden, so where you've got not just one crop. Do you think, obviously in New York you haven't got a lot of space for that, but the idea of restaurants also trying to grow some of their own food directly, either not saying next door to the restaurant, but in another space where they've got absolute control over what's going on? Have you got any projects like that lined up?
We were thinking about that for the restaurant. Yeah, that's one point. Hopefully it's going to happen. Yeah, like we have that restaurant like Blue Hill in New York that does that as part of the farm. Yeah, it can be, you can live like in autonomy, but I also believe about short circuits, like sponsoring certain farmers or reworking and working in a different way, like not working about, oh, I need that, so can you produce that for me? But say, okay, we are, let's say, back again to New York, we're in New York, you can't grow everything in New York. So instead of adapting as a farmer, adapting to our demand, we should more thinking about, okay, what can we get locally from the people around us? What is a crop? What is the main quality ingredients we should get from these guys? The idea of controlling more is just because there is such a lack of transparency today. Like you don't really know what you buy, especially with the new regulations happening and what's happening between Europe and the US. And, it's so difficult to get back to the truth and really knowing what you are buying.
But isn't one problem, people always say we want local, we want healthy, but they're not always prepared to pay for it?
I don't think the question is not really the price. I think they are not ready for the lack of diversity if you don't live in the right place. If you choose to live in New York, Manhattan, it's not like you are living in Florida or you are living in California. You need to change your habit. We have been spoiled. We have been spoiled since World War II, but even more today, we have been spoiled to be able to eat anything we want, whenever we want, in 2 seconds. I think going back to cycle, going back to patience, going back to the idea of you can't get whatever you want unless you put the agriculture in a way that they need to provide you with that. We need to be just more demanding to people providing the food, but also to ourselves, and say, you know what, I maybe can't get that today, or maybe the bread should taste slightly differently. And I really believe the next revolution is going to go through the palate. It's going to be a palate revolution. The way we eat is because that's such a direct impact on our pleasure, on our intuition, on our intellect, and on our body. That's going to be this is what's happening today. And we know that when you see how Monsanto is like going to try to get from the seeds up to the medication, it's the future goes through the way we eat. There is something very, very strong to be done today. And it starts at school, it starts in restaurants, it starts what you eat and drink.
Because that's one of the biodynamic ideas, isn't it? It's when you eat healthy food, it's not just good for your physical body, but also for your spirit. I'm not saying the fact that you eat a biodynamic carrot means you're going to go to church, but the idea that your way of thinking and interacting is slightly more in tune with the people in the world around you.
I think so. I think you feel better if you eat better. We know that when you eat well, and everything is connected. There is energy. Everything is connected. So
okay, next up we're going to interview your philosophy teacher, and we're going to ask him, are you happy with what Pascaline is doing at the moment? What do you think he's going to say?
I hope he will be proud, and we can have a good bottle of wine with him. And I'm going to tell him, I'm so sorry I gave up philosophy, but I will go back. Don't worry, I will finish my PhD.
Pascaline, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Fantastic conversation. Incredibly dynamic person. I wish you every success. Hope to stay in touch.
Thanks a lot. Nice to meet you finally.
Follow Italian Wine Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.